When going into Bloober's remake of Silent Hill 2, I was frankly a little nervous. After completing the game, I was left feeling satisfied, yet something felt off. The original Silent Hill 2 is regarded as the pinnacle of psychological horror in video games. In my personal opinion, the game was fine. It doesn't speak to me in ways it did for many others, but me branding this renowned game as just fine does not mean I think it's bad. Far from it. The game achieves its goals in presenting an atmospheric experience with great visuals, sound design, level design, and of course, the iconic soundtrack by Akira Yamaoka. The story is where I didn't find myself as engaged, but James Sunderland's psychological journey in facing his demons is admittedly fun at the very least. It's Silent Hill 1 that I consider to be the better game. At the time of playing the remake, I felt the exact same. We were gifted with again, fantastic atmosphere, sound design and score, with the addition of some of the best voice acting I've seen from a game in a very long time. Being a remake and carrying over elements that games are now capable of that the original wasn't, to my surprise, the core combat was unfortunately very wonky and amateurish at best. The combat from the original isn't free from criticism either. It's not great, but the remake deserves more scrutiny because there is potential to improve on the combat, yet they didn't. The poor combat isn't the topic of today's video. The pacing is what I feel sadly hurts the game in its replay value. To put into perspective, I went back to the original after playing the remake to see if my thoughts on the remake having a stretched out runtime held any merit. In just under 3 hours, I was able to experience all the content that the original Silent Hill 2 had to offer and had a much better experience as a result. Then it hit me. For a game with a camera system that I personally don't like, I appreciate that it didn't overstay its welcome, becoming a satisfying breezy experience compared to the remake. Now I'm not opposed to games having long runtime so long as their pacing is good and the content satisfying, and Silent Hill 2 Remake only achieves one of these, and even then its drawn out runtime hurts the experience. If Bloober added new content to accommodate the remake's newfound length, then I wouldn't have a problem, but the excessive stretching out of the game's levels that were perfectly constructed in the original, by the way, is the game's Achilles heel, making the original Silent Hill 2 the better of the two. For example, the time to complete the Woodside Apartments in the original would typically take 1.5 hours depending if you knew where to go and what to do. In the remake, it would take you 3 to 4 hours or more to complete this segment, all the while having no extra content. It is quite literally stretched out to feel artificially longer that has no benefits, and this problem permeates throughout the entire game. Levels that could be completed in under an hour now take longer, and yet there is nothing new thrown in to justify it. So what happened? Why, despite doing so many things right, the runtime is what brings the remake down? I found an article with Bloober stating that the remake was twice the length of the original, which at the time didn't bother me as I believed there would have been more surprises to justify it, to which there was none. I personally feel that Bloober went with this longer runtime instead of being similar to the original out of fear that people of today would complain about the runtime, which unfortunately ended up hurting the game in the end. Over the years, I've seen people complain about game length, determining that short games do not justify their price tag, a complaint I only feel is valid on a very case-by-case basis. Depending on the game, if it has endless means of replayability or fleshed out mechanics, it really doesn't matter what the price tag is. Sonic the Hedgehog, Resident Evil and Dead Rising are prime examples of games that, despite being full price and short, the amount of content within these games really makes that a non-issue. That includes the quality of said content. Another great example is the early Splinter Cell games, which have no extra content. You beat the game and that's it, but the meaningful mechanics, level design, and characterization of its main protagonist are what brings me and many players of that fanbase back over and over again.
I haven't been in the field in years.
Sure, but tradecraft is something you don't forget. It's like riding a bike.
Or wearing high heels. Lasers. Lasers are so...
90s?
I was gonna say 70s. Can you please stop making me feel old?
Not to mention the awesome score. It's quite sad, because had this problem been addressed by adding new content via new enemies, puzzles, I wouldn't have minded the extra length. But because of its nature in the way that it is handled, I just can't see myself playing this remake again. Next to quality of content, pacing is everything for me. Pacing of the gameplay, how the story is told, is important in determining if I like a game. Silent Hill 2 Remake has many things that I enjoy. The exploration of the town itself, the voice acting, most specifically, a wonderful performance by the ever-talented Luke Roberts as James Sunderland, who unfortunately did not win an award at the Game Awards that I feel he rightfully deserved. Even with that, I think he's aware of the reaction to his performance, and I hope this industry uses him more in the future. Outside of all of that, you have a remake of one of the most beloved games of all time that feels uneven. Its heart, in certain areas, is in the right place. I will not fault the game for that, nor Bloober. But the execution in the gameplay department, the stretched out length, leaves a lot to be desired. There is a good remake of Silent Hill 2 in here. I wasn't even opposed to it when it was announced, but whatever that game is, will never, sadly, ever be realised. I don't mean to sound a contrarian here, but the faults of the remake are why I personally choose to play the original simply for it not being a complete drag. My point is, there is a good game somewhere in here that is overshadowed by padded out runtime that I feel Bloober really should have reconsidered before finalising their ideas. But considering their history, I'm not entirely surprised, which leaves me very concerned of what the quality of the remake of Silent Hill 1 is going to be like. If the remake of Silent Hill 1 has the same problems as 2 Remake does, then I just don't think Bloober is the right person to continue doing these remakes, because the short length of the original games is what makes them so much fun, and I appreciate games that do that. These games aren't grand epics, they are small adventures with many layers to them, and you don't need to have a 20+ hour game to achieve all of that. If only there were more games and studios out there that understood this. But until Silent Hill 1 Remake comes out, this is all up to question, and that doesn't sit right with me.